Hello and welcome. We are back with another A-Star alumni interview. Today we have Pauline. Welcome, Pauline.
Hi everyone.
And so, yeah, Pauline has a long history with A-Star. One of, let's say, the original scholars, or batch one, batch two, batch one, batch one. Okay, great. So way back in your JC days, you kind of heard about this NSTB A-Star. So, like, if we go back in time, like, what was your introduction to A-Star like? Or what did you think of A-Star kind of before you joined?
All right, so interestingly, right, I would have to say that I'm one of those, and you stop calculating how old I am.
Yeah.
I'm one of those that was fortunate enough to be part of the transition from the National Science and Technology Board into A-Star.
Okay.
So the very first time I heard A-Star was when the then chairman, Philip Yeo, came up with it, when he was brainstorming certain names of what to call A-Star.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was the first time.
So then, I mean, NSTB, the National Science Technology Board, which transformed into A-Star. Like when you were growing up, secondary, JC, like did that have any significance to you as a teenager?
Yeah, I guess I was really attracted to NSTB right from the start. I was, of course, one of the earliest scholars that got sort of an EDB scholarship, and I went overseas. And when I came back, I had to serve a bond commitment of a year, and they asked me to choose whether it would be EDB or NSTB.
Okay.
And of course, I will always choose science no matter what, right?
Okay.
And that's how I landed in NSTB, only to know that about a year or two later, we then transitioned it into A-Star, which was super exciting. Yeah.
So you said like the science is what you're used. So what's your kind of academic background or scientific background, and maybe even a step beyond that, like what drew you into science as a teenager?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I guess I always loved science. It's always fascinating. I always had questions in my mind, like how do things come to be, right? I mean, I chose biology because in those days, like in the 70s and 80s, no one really understood why we exist and how we continue to exist. And those were questions that in those days, math and physics didn't really answer. And so it was really, as a teenager and even all the way to university, biomedical was really considered not very popular. In fact, the year that I went in, it was considered a dumping ground.
Okay.
Like everybody was rushing into com science and IT. I guess the people who chose com science and IT, they'd be your data scientists and AI specialists today. But I guess I was always interested in biology, whatever that was. I think in those days, the courses were not very well defined. So we just took up like general biology. So I picked microbiology, biochemistry, and it led me to where I am today. And in fact, I think my parents were very concerned because they wanted me to be like a lawyer or an engineer. Yeah, that was the job.
What's this biologist thing?
And my dad was like, what would you do when you graduate? Are you going to work in a zoo? I'm like, Dad, those are zoologists, not biologists, right? Yeah, but I'm so glad I chose the dumping ground because I think the dumping ground led me here.
Okay. Yeah. So then leading here, right? So you finished your uni, I assume as a scholar you went through grad school as well?
Yeah.
And then you came back. Maybe what was your then, let's say, beyond the scholarship, your entry point into R&D within the A-Star family?
Okay, so I think again I was really fortunate because it's really the early days, and it was the pioneering times of A-Star. So I really started my early career in A-Star as a research sort of management. I managed research institutes and programs. So very fortunate in those days as like a senior officer, you could do that. So I think I was taking care of 3 research institutes, a couple of research programs, maybe for about 3 years. And in fact, together with my executive director then, we set up the A-Star Scholarship Program.
Okay.
Right, so I was like one of the first, to write up the paper to start like NSS and AGS.
Okay.
Then I think by the 4th year or something, then because of that inspirational, seeing people signing up for scholarships and everything, I knew grad school was always what I wanted to do. Some point in my life, I said, I'm going to go back, I'm going to do a PhD. But I guess, I procrastinated. I didn't do it until, I saw that there was a lot of opportunities in Singapore by, I think, like the late 90s or so.
Yeah.
Or early 2000s. And I said, yeah, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time that I drop my administrative work and go apply for a PhD.
Okay.
And so I applied for the AGS.
Yes.
And I got in. So.
Okay. And so did you do your grad school locally or? Okay.
Locally in A-Star.
Okay, so
Yeah.
in A-Star affiliated with
NUS.
with
Yeah,
NUS, okay.
NUS. So, I mean, a lot of people would say, right, like, why would you choose to do your PhD in A-Star? And I'm like, why not? Like, the world was coming to A-Star in the early 2000s,
Yes.
right? They were attracting a lot of foreign talent, a lot of very well-known researchers and PIs were moving to Singapore. So you could do very world-class research within Singapore. Why do you have to go overseas? And of course, because I was familiar with this environment, I thought it was faster. And to be honest with you, I wasn't a young PhD student because I didn't start
Yeah,
right
you had
after.
a couple of years.
Yeah. So, you think about these things and you're like, okay, how do you accelerate that pathway and
Yeah.
do things quickly? If you had to relocate to another country and understand the ecosystem, understand the networks, you might take even longer, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you're in Singapore and you're so familiar and people are coming to you, so why move?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So, can you share in a couple sentences what was your PhD research?
Okay.
about?
All right. So I worked on stem cells in the good old days where Singapore was really right ahead in stem cell biology. In fact, we set up the Singapore Stem Cell Consortium. I did it in the Institute of Molecular Biology.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we started off renting a space at IMCB.
Okay.
And then when the building was ready, we moved over and set up the labs there. And it's really
When you
exciting.
say building was ready, that would be Biopolis at the time?
Oh, no.
This is still pre-Biopolis?
It was Biopolis already.
Okay.
Yeah, but the new buildings, I think Immunos and all that, they weren't ready.
Okay,
Yeah.
the multiple phases.
Yeah, I think the first phase, which is like Proteos and Chromos and all, is ready. So we were in IMCB, which was Proteos.
Okay.
But at the same time, we had to start up Immunos and
Yeah.
to move all the stem cell and immunotherapy work over there.
Okay.
So really exciting times.
Yes.
While I was doing my PhD.
So then you graduate and kind of transition to like, I guess PhD is probably full-time lab work, but then even as a career.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Okay.
so-
So I did a postdoc as well. I
Okay.
mean, I really spent about 8 years in basic R&D.
Okay.
That's what I thought I needed. But I have to, clarify that I never really wanted to be an academic researcher. That was clear in my mind. Like,
Yes.
the reason why I took a PhD is because I've always wanted to help commercialize, like translate R&D into like products or services or things that would impact the world, on a global basis. But I guess in those days, the early 2000s, you didn't really have that much knowledge in Singapore. You don't really know how to go about it, right?
Yeah.
But the one thing I thought I should do is first understand how scientists think and how scientists do their work. Because how can you help science? How can you translate science without even understanding it? So that was the first thing I set out to do. And to be honest, I thought that just doing a PhD would help. But then I realized, no, it's not enough, right? You have to do a postdoc.
You see all you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like, if you really wanted to help translate things, you also need to learn how to lead a team. And usually as a PhD student, you don't get to do that,
Yeah.
right? It's really your own research, your own project. Sometimes, most of the time, your supervisor helps you with it, right? But when you become a postdoc, that's when you actually get to lead a project that you propose and you
Yes.
lead a team. And I think that's really important to know, right? And if I still am interested in taking research outputs into the real world. This is something that I constantly still am able to converse with scientists about. Yeah.
So then transition from postdoc to then maybe, how long did you stay in A-Star as a postdoc, and then maybe share a bit about your exit from A-Star?
Oh, okay. So it wasn't really like a super exit. Like, I have to say that right all along, right, even while I was doing my PhD and postdoc, I was really interested in like tech transfer and commercialization. So I did a lot of like attachments and free work for Exploit Technologies Private Limited, the then INE, A-Star INE
Yes.
today. And it's in that I learned, right, things about intellectual property, about investments, about commercializing R&D. That slowly sort of transitioned me to an opportunity called IPI, Intellectual
Okay.
Property Intermediary.
Yes.
So I think that was in 2010, if I'm not wrong, 2010, where they did, this was placed under A-STAR. So A-STAR was still the implementing agency for IPI then. And the people that I worked with at ETPL actually offered me the opportunity because they were very strong in engineering, physical sciences and
Yes.
engineering, and they said they needed someone who was familiar in biology to set up the healthcare cluster for IPI. And I'm like, of course, this is like the dream job, right? I didn't spend all these years to stay in the lab. I can finally take what I learned and bring it out there. And I think the mission of IPI till today is to look for technologies to upskill SMEs in Singapore.
Yes.
Right, and of course, it would have been so comfortable for me because if I take care of the healthcare cluster, I'll be looking for biomedical technologies, whether it's from Singapore or around the world. It would have been something that was very meaningful to do. So the transition was like I had that opportunity about 4 years to set up IPI, and that was still in A-STAR. So I still count today the 4 years in IPI as still being part of A-STAR. So the final exit out of A-STAR was also because it was related. So the then management who was running IPI had moved to the National Research Foundation, NRF.
Okay.
And I guess it's a continuation of what I really wanted to do because whilst helping the companies scale up in Singapore, I realized that there's a challenge in terms of, if the ecosystem was not ready, even if each company did well, they can't scale, right? You need to build value chains of, certain organizations and companies supporting each other so that it is sustainable. And I shared this challenge, of course, with the then management, and they said, hey, why don't you just come join us at NRF and try to, effect some of these changes with policy. Of course, as a young staff, I had no idea what that meant. So I just said, oh, okay, let's do it. And I just took up the job without knowing. It really was a lot of like policy change, working with political office holders, writing up new initiatives, new schemes, convincing ministers and funders to put money where it ought to be, to grow the ecosystem.
Okay.
Right, because it was kind of a mindset change. We were very, very used to funding projects and companies and institutions. But to tell them to put money to build an ecosystem is like planting seeds in a garden, and you don't even know what those seeds will grow into. It was quite iffy, and I think that a lot of it they were very uncomfortable with. But I'm glad we did it.
So you're at NRF, and so kind of where did you go after that? Maybe a couple steps, and then to where you are today.
All right. Okay. So, well, even at the NRF, I always wanted to myself because my entire life I really wanted to help commercialize R&D, right? But without completely understand what are the drivers in private sector that would bring R&D into the commercial world, I felt that it was always difficult to guide something that you don't totally understand.
Yeah.
So, I made that decision to cut the cord with government and, went into private sector for about 3 years. And actually, I helped a friend run a biotech startup, cell therapy startup. But those were the COVID years, so it was a bit slow. Like those 2-3 years was slow, and I found myself having enough time to do other stuff at the same time. So I actually joined the Singapore Business Federation. I was the chairperson of their technology council for science, for technology innovation and digitalization.
Okay.
Yeah, to help SMEs digitalize during the COVID period.
Yes.
And then in the last year of that 3 years, I was actually asked by a bank to help them set up a technology unit, so that they can connect with tech founders in Singapore, burgeoning tech founders in Singapore. So I found that it was really 3 years of very enriching experience in the private sector that gave me exposure to both startups, a trade association, and a bank, MNC. All in 3 years. And so I felt, that's actually kind of enough for me to understand what are the drivers, what are the levers, and what could really make this work. Because that's still my interest, right? Coming in to help with commercializing research that comes from public institutions, right? So that brought me back to where I am today. Today I'm in the National Health Innovation Centre. So this is a unit that works with all the public hospitals in Singapore, precisely to innovate, develop, commercialize, and get new technologies implemented into real-world clinical practice. And this is really exciting because all the, the experience and everything I learned from A-Star, as well as private sector, packaged into now hopefully able to bring some of these technologies to bear, right? Where we can finally see some of the positive outcomes of our biomedical research going into clinic, going into healthcare. Yeah.
Okay. So when you say, I mean, the National Health Innovation Center, NHIC, right, healthcare can be quite broad, right?
Yeah.
From bedside care to therapies, therapeutics, to even maybe med tech and devices. Do you have a specific focus on that, or you guys oversee everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're technology agnostic.
Okay.
We have a dual mandate, so long as it meets a clinical need, a clear unmet clinical need, and can be commercialized, thereby bringing back both healthcare and economic outcomes, we're interested in looking at it.
Okay.
Right? And we fund tech, so it's not just like productivity tools or, because that's also required for clinical workflows in the hospitals, but we really look at like medical devices, right? New therapies, we do that. Even bringing in like AI into healthcare practice, right? So that you can improve accuracy, you can improve speed.
Okay.
And also things that, technology that would help enable us to maybe shift from curative care to preventative care.
Okay.
Because, they always say it's healthcare, but is it really healthcare? We're actually more in sick care now.
Yes.
So if we can shift a little bit more from sick care to healthcare, that would probably require a little bit of technology assistance.
Yes.
So yeah, we tend to look at this kind of opportunities.
And then the goal is deployment. I mean, one end goal is deployment. I mean, into the 3 clusters that we have in Singapore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course that's deployment to health. The public healthcare clusters in Singapore pretty much covers about 80% of the population here. But you all know that Singapore is not really a market. Like even if you could sell a device to 5 million people, it's only just 5 million. And you won't because it's for like healthcare, right?
Yes.
You probably use it only when you want to manage your health or you want to cure the sick.
Yes.
Right. So the market is outside of Singapore. And in order for a new technology to be sustainable, you've got to find a way to make it scale. So that's why we work with industry. We continue working with industry, whether it's venture capitalists that would invest in startups or industry that would license, companies that would license these technologies so that it can help us bring it beyond the shores of Singapore.
Yes.
Right? And that's a way to sort of also get financial sustainability to ensure that these technologies are both accessible and affordable to patients and individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense. Like even if you came up with the best, like new, CAR T or immune cell, but it's going to cost like what, $500,000 or $1 million a pop. Who's going to afford it, right?
Yeah.
Patients won't be able to afford it, and so you can't bring the healthcare impact you want to see. Now, if you work to be able to manufacture this at large scale, scale it up, distribute it around the world, then you can bring the cost down. When you bring the cost down, then it becomes tenable for more people to use the technology.
Yeah. So it's really, I mean, bringing the whole ecosystem together, and like you said earlier, right, the ecosystem, but the supply chain as well, right? You have the R&D, you've got the different SMEs or MNCs who are providing component technology or even process technology for something, and then in the hands of an end user, and then showing that through a company, possibly government procurement into the Singapore clusters, but then those companies exporting technology and bringing it regional or worldwide. Is that in a nutshell?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's actually the pathway that most of the drugs and medical devices we see today, like in practice, that's the same journey it took, right? So I think that, here in Singapore, we can do that as well. It's just that how do we connect the dots, right?
Yeah.
From R&D to development and finally to deployment.
Okay. You've got a lot of experience over the years. What lessons, have you learned, through your years from, the lab to even, research administration, the lab, and then, your commercialization journeys, public sector, private sector, can you, connect all that through in some, career lessons and maybe also bring that back to, some of the future A-Star staff that might be looking at, what is this going on here?
Yeah, I think the take-home message for me, it might have taken 25 years to realize that. It kind of takes a village to bring something to bear, right? It takes a village to bring a child up.
Yeah.
Same thing, it takes a village to bring an R&D output or a research, a discovery into where we see today, what we see today, right? Something that you can use, bring it into clinic and market. No one person can do this alone. And that's one of the reasons why, in the end, I said that we probably needed to build that value chain, that ecosystem,
Yes.
so that everyone supports each other. It wasn't very clear to me when I was a young officer or a researcher in A-Star. Because you tend to want to, when you're younger, you tend to want to do everything yourself,
Yeah,
right?
you want to conquer everything. You say, I can do that. I can do that.
And it appears like you can, right? Because if you really spend all that time doing it yourself, yeah, of course you can. But the world doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah.
And you can accelerate things and get things done so much better when everybody focuses on what they do well and help each other, right? And that's what I'm learning today, right? So, like you said, public sector, private sector, whether you're in policy or whether you're in the actual commercialization, productization, and sales, you actually depend on each other, right? And there has to be that very, very intimate, trusting relationship between government that continues to look at policies and regulation and even early stage funding.
Yeah.
And then when the time is right, to hand over to private sector, where they're really good at manufacturing, scaling, distribution, bringing the cost down. So it's a continuous virtuous cycle. It doesn't end there. And it works with everything, Ruben. It does. So looking back, I mean, sometimes I wish if I could replay my life all over again, that I started that way 25 years ago, really finding your hood as soon as possible, and the people in the hood that would help you bring that together, than struggling. And to the new kids, who's out there now working in the lab, instead of trying to struggle yourself, go find your hood, right? Go find people who could help you with different parts of the experiment, collaborate, and get to the end point faster and better. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic lesson. Like you said, it's a continual journey, a continual lesson. Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe stepping a bit away, or maybe adjacent. Like, what influences you, maybe outside of work, that you maybe bring back to your professional life?
Outside of work, I wouldn't think it's outside. It's within work. I think it's mentors.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that in my entire career journey, right? I had great leaders, great mentors. I guess when you were young, you didn't realize that these people were actually trying to help influence your life positively, right? I would say my very first strong influencer was Chairman Philip Yeo himself, who was chairman of A-Star back in the days, right? He was definitely a driver. He drove things when he believed it would work, even though there was nothing there. Yeah. So the energy of what I do today, it's still very inspired by Chairman Philip Yeo's mantra, right? That, even if people told you Singapore cannot make it, right? You have nothing. You are so small. There's no market. Even if they said that, that spirit of driving what you believe in will someday come true. Then came, later in my life, I guess as you transition from individual contributors into a management person yourself, then I had a lot of mentors who were very good leaders, people managers. I would say many of these people were actually at the National Research Foundation, and how they would teach you that the one thing that could enable you to continue what you believe in is succession planning, right? And I think that this is really important, especially for A-Star today. I mean, we have so many great talent that come and go, right? Is there a way, I think this is what the alumni is trying to do, right? Is there a way that we can actually form this very strong network, the connection, so that the ones that have come and gone, we can actually mentor the future ones so that they know, because we're not going to be here forever, right? But the dream lives on. The dream cannot live on if there isn't a new generation that continues building on it. So I think that's kind of what I learned, and I think that's probably what I hope that we all can do. Whether we're here in A-Star today or whether we've left and we want to come back, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's just about how do you make this continue as a dream. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Pauline. I think we can leave it at that. If anyone in the audience wants to connect with you, what would be the best way to reach out?
LinkedIn. I don't lock my profile.
Okay. Thanks, Pauline.
Thank you. Thanks, Ruben. Yeah.